As episode 8 opens up, we see that they're trying to make moves to even things back up, and so here we see that Lannister has gone off to try to make a treaty to give him access to the seas, right? It's very important that they break this blockade. The reason being that the small folk, at least right now, are not a threat, right? But we've seen that they have the potential to be. As the blockade is in place, though Team Green has not put it in place, the townspeople, the common folk, are looking to them to break this blockade. And each day that goes by with them being asked to give of their resources to help feed the dragons, while they themselves starve, it's gonna just push things closer to being in an uncomfortable place for Team Green. Because past a certain point, the common folk, the small folk, might turn around and start to look at them as being part of the problem. And we've already seen Rhaenyra taking advantage of this and sort of being the knight in shining armor by sending food, provisions, and resources into King's Landing at a time when the people are on the verge of starving. She's doing for them what their king can't. At the end of the last episode, Aemon was confronted by Rhaenyra and her dragon, as well as these new dragons. Now, something to note is that, again, it's this thing of factions within these teams, where, because of the way that Aemon has conducted himself, you have where members of his team aren't necessarily sharing information with him. So, in the previous episode, Larys and the other guy on the council, they found out about Rhaenyra's, I think if it wasn't like that she'd actually acquired these new dragon riders, that she at least had put feelers out to try to call in any Targaryens any individuals who might have any kind of Targaryen blood to see if they could potentially be dragon riders. Rhaenyra was able to pull off this really significant accomplishment without Aemon knowing about it. And what's even more troubling than that, or should be for him, is that, but he doesn't know about this, is that, at least not at this point, members of his council knew about this, but said nothing. Early on in the episode here, we see him after he's burned a town and doubles back to do further damage. And this is a place that I don't quite know if they've mentioned it before, or at least I don't remember its significance, but we know that at the very least, this place here doesn't have dragons, right? It's not like Rhaenyra is going to pop up out of this location and engage him in a fight. So basically, because he's been vested in the moment, he goes off and finds a relatively unprotected castle and attacks it. He's not realizing that, sure, he might have this dragon, but these things that he's doing will actually very likely alienate the common folk. Corlys and Rhaenyra have a conversation about what the next steps should be, and also assessing what's taking place so far. We'll come back to them in a moment. Corlys actually mentions that Helena, which is Rhaenyra's half-sister, wife to Aegon and thus queen at the current moment, that she also has a dragon, but apparently she's never ridden it. Like, it's just not her thing. But the dragon that she has, that belongs to her, is actually quite formidable in its own right. And Rhaenyra kind of just brushes off Helena as being like peaceful and, riding dragons isn't really her thing, so she doesn't see her as being a threat. But we know that underestimating individuals can often lead to peril. And not that long after, we see this kind of play out. The idea that if Team Green becomes desperate enough, that they might try to compel Helena to participate in the war. And in walks Aemond, demanding that Helena do her duty to her family and to the crown, and that she mounts her dragon for the first time. And not just that, but that she goes into battle with him, because they need all of the dragons they can get. I actually respected it that Alicent stands up, helps Helena to fend off Aemond. And again, it's this thing of, yes, you want to win the war, but at what cost? Right? Like, you can't allow yourself to be completely corrupted in the process of trying to win this war, or you can't destroy everything in the process of trying to win this war, because what are you going to have left afterwards? Like this single-mindedness of, we have to win this war through whatever means, and if that means that the first time that Helena gets on a dragon, she's going into battle, then so be it. Sacrifices must be made. So we see that a lot of people are trying to jump ship. In King's Landing, Aegon is still laid up in bed, as he will be for quite some time. And Larys comes to see him because he figures with Aemond being gone on like his rampage, now's the perfect time for Aegon to make his escape to safety. Not that they'd be going away forever, but the idea he proposes is that they leave and they go to Braavos, where he's stashed some of his family's money, and they basically wait out this war there. Because in the process of Rhaenyra and Aemon trying to control this corner of the world, Aegon would be better off removing himself from the fray, letting the two of them fight it out, and then he just returns to town to deal with whoever's the last person standing. And so, with Larys, he seems to be absolutely a wheeler-dealer type. But it seems that with Aegon's experience, and he states here that he knows that Aemon tried to kill him, right, as does Larys, but that Larys seems to have some kind of care or compassion for him. They both recognize that if Aegon stays in town, that, never mind he's doing better, in his desperation, Aemon might decide to try to finish the job that he started. So Christian Cole and Alicent's brother, their army is still on the march. And so Christian Cole has been seeming rather down in the dumps these last few episodes. And he pulls out the handkerchief that was given to him by Alicent. It's unclear if Alicent's brother has had suspicions for a while, or in seeing Sir Cole with the handkerchief that he realizes that there's been some funny business going on between his sister and this guy. Maybe he was trying to defend Alicent's honor or the honor of his family. He approaches Sir Christian Cole with his sword drawn, and Sir Cole doesn't even really react to it. Instead, he expresses, which I felt was the case from that first fight between the dragons, that he realized with these people are on these creatures that are incredibly large, fearsome, that from some distance away, one dragon on its own can do immense damage to a castle, to an army, that it can fly over and just light pretty much everything in view on fire. How is he as a soldier supposed to stand up against that? It's like basically he's taking these men in his army on a suicide mission, where sure, up to this point they might have won some battles along the way, but in the grand scheme of things, them as soldiers, it's like Team Green overall might have a chance to win the fight, to win the war. But the soldiers, the rank and file soldiers such as himself, are really the ones who are going to be in danger. And again, it's this thing of, you're doing all of this stuff for what? That you are, his life will not improve in any appreciable way. Yet, he's basically marching towards his death, marching himself and these men towards their deaths. And for what reason? To help settle the score between this wealthy family. And it's actually quite sad when you think about it. Like, this guy is sacrificing his life, his motivations and whatnot we can get into, but here it stands, you've sacrificed all of this stuff. You've gotten yourself into all of these kinds of messes and plots and schemes and whatnot. And it's like, now what are you going to do? And was any of it worth it? Once again, Damon at Harrenhal, where one of Rhaenyra's representatives comes to meet with him. I don't remember the man's name, but he has sworn, he's like this guy that keeps popping up. He's part of her council, but questions her every move. Or when she doesn't go along with his preferred plan of action, that he questions her suitability for sitting on the throne, and instead harps on how much more, or rather implies how much better things would be with a man sitting on the throne. And so there's this teetering, this back and forth about betrayal. Will Damon or will he not betray Rhaenyra? We see that Rhaenyra's guy has gone to Harrenhal to check in on Damon. But he's also added on a side mission of his own, which is he makes contact with Damon, and he learns that Damon has this army in place. But instead of trying to patch things up between Damon and Rhaenyra, he allows what I believe is sexism to cloud his judgment. Up to this point, Damon has been having this internal fight about this. Will he use this army for the greater good and for Rhaenyra's cause, or will he use it for his own selfish gain? The Targaryens could be mighty, but they're fearsome fighters, but they fight other people, they fight each other. If they could get it together and control their tempers and whatnot, they could do some damage. In response to the letter of warning from Harrenhal, from Strong, Rhaenyra flies there with Adam to see for herself what exactly is going on with David. So, where up to this point she's been pretty patient with his lack of communication, she sent this guy out to, or rather, it's not really clear if she sent him out, or if he went on his own, given his actions once he got there. But pretty much she arrives in Harrenhal to take stock of the situation for herself. And Adam is there sort of to provide additional security. We see her land with her dragon, and Adam remains in the air circling the area, in the event that anyone else should show up. Now, and I thought it was actually really cool the way that they let it play out. Prior to this, we saw what I'm really hoping is the last of David in these hallucinations. Him seeing the future of House Targaryen, the White Walkers and the king from beyond the wall and all this kind of stuff. As well as it looks like the death of the dragons, and it even looked like at one point we'll be giving birth to dragons, which I'm thinking is probably Daenerys, Targaryen, who we know from Game of Thrones. And that by the time she comes along, that the Targaryens, her and her brother, are wandering because they don't have a place to call home and there are no more dragons. But Damon sees from his time to her time sort of flashes of what takes place and the future that is to come. That their house, their family is going to go through some very terrible times, but it's part of their legacy. It's part of what they have to endure. And again, it goes back to this song of Ice and Fire, where it had been told to Rhaenyra by the series. Here, he has now seen it in his hallucinations. And it's the final piece that pushes him to bend the knee, to accept that regardless of his ambition, regardless of what he might want, the story's already been written. He'll play a role in it, but it's not centered on him. It's just not in the cards for him to be king. And so accepting this reality, seeing what is to come, and the importance of them pulling together, he bends the knee. The men that have sworn their loyalty to him, he then swears his loyalty to Rhaenyra, thereby meaning that those men are now sworn to Rhaenyra. Gets the crowd amped up, gets everybody on the same page, hip hip hooray, they're all now with Rhaenyra. So that's one thing down. It's important to see because within the crowd, we also see the council member who up to this point has questioned Rhaenyra, and been pushing for a man to sit on the throne, where, I don't remember if it was him or I think it might have been like his father or something like that, swore to this loyalty oath that was like handed out by Viserys that his daughter would sit on the Iron Throne, that she would be his successor, right? And so he's spoken out, he's even here tried to carry out an uprising of sorts, but it looks like he as well finally accepts the fate that Daemon is riding with Rhaenyra, and so you can step aside if you want, but this is basically what the agenda is. And it looks like he finally makes his peace with it as well. So throughout the season, the series really, you've had this thing of destiny and people fighting against it, right? Daemon's destiny being to be a fearsome warrior, not to be king, but yet he fights against it. He's fought against it now for 2 seasons. With Rhaenyra, you had it where she's supposed to play a part in this war. She's supposed to be the one that unifies them. We see her fighting against her destiny. They've all accepted the part that they're going to have to play in this war. Alicent being Alicent, where she, after Rhaenyra's made how many attempts and overtures to slow things down and for them to repair the situation and whatnot, she rebuffed her. And now she's begging for, peace. Because she knows what's to come. But it's like, ma'am, you set this in motion. When you look at it, she's pretty much asking Rhaenyra to grant her a level of grace that she most certainly was not willing to extend to Rhaenyra. And unfortunately, it's a matter of too little too late, where things have been set in motion that can't be stopped or can't be dialed out. Now, I actually thought it was pretty cool to see the various forces gathering for the 2 teams. It got me feeling like really excited, like, okay. But then I happened to look and see the amount of time remaining in the episode, and I was like, where there's been all of this build-up. For the season, we've had one fight between dragons, and as I've mentioned, I actually wasn't looking forward to the dragons fighting, right? What I saw looked really interesting in, episode 4? But Prior to that, I thought that it would look cheesy. It didn't. It was actually quite exciting. But I also wasn't expecting from there for them to have like a dragon fight in every episode. I was just hoping that they would have some kind of fighting in the episodes where I feel like they've built up so much anticipation that yes, when this first battle took place, it was exciting, but then it felt like things slowed back down. And so now here it is that you see these armed forces, for lack of a better term, that they've put together. We see them mustering the troops, right? So the soldiers are marching. We see preparations being made for boats, right? We see Corlys and his son sitting on like one of these little boats being rowed out to a ship. We see, various preparations being made with the new dragon riders, them being outfitted in Valyrian chainmetal and whatnot. But then we don't actually see any fighting. When I tell you, I saw like the amount of time remaining, and I was like, I think this is cutting it kind of close for there to be a battle. And it was like, yeah, it was cool with the troops gathering and whatnot, but I started feeling a little bit nervous about what was going to take place. And here you have it that they end the season, I guess trying for like a cliffhanger or something like that, with the armies being gathered, with them marching towards battle rather than the actual battle taking place. And I was speaking with a coworker during the week about the show. It's summertime, might not be when you're watching, but she explained that after catching up on the episodes, she started feeling a bit like she was losing interest. Especially when it got to episode 7 in season 2. And I understand because I've felt the same way since that dragon fight. Like, we had all of this anticipation to get in towards this fight, to get in towards this battle, to get in towards this war. And it's like every time they build momentum, they slow things back down. And my feeling is, in watching the show, I think it's good. I think it has some high points and whatnot. But after having watched all of episode 8, in comparing season 1 and season 2, I think I would actually go with season 1. And I was actually disappointed with the ending, because I feel like I've sat through so much of the season in anticipation for something epic, and they end on this note, where I honestly feel like this show is like the second half of Fire and Blood. And I feel like they're trying to take what should be a shorter show and stretch it out over a longer amount of time. And I'm actually a bit disappointed in the show. Will I watch next season? I'm pretty sure I will. Will I be as excited? Maybe not. But I just felt like the season finale was a bit of a letdown. Like season finales are usually these big events. And I feel like I just didn't get that from this episode. It felt like a regular episode. And it was disappointing. Like, I was really, really looking forward to this, just like I was looking forward to the season premiere. And I just felt it wasn't given the energy that I was expecting for a season finale. Season finales, if they're trying to go out, like, on a... But, all in all, I don't know, man. I'm actually a bit bummed. Will I watch next season? I'm pretty sure that I will, especially because I'm doing the reviews. But I guess we'll have to see.
Thanks for tuning in. To ensure you don't miss any episodes, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, go ahead and click the thumbs up button if you like what you saw, and go ahead and share it on social media.